wanted to touch on before we got into exactly how we're, the technical nitty-gritty of the platform is why we're using the platform in the first place, as opposed to some of the other platforms out there. As one of the devs who's been here since before CQ was a thing, I figured I might be able to shed some light. So the question is, why does LinkedIn use CQ? And the way to start answering that question is to consider where we were prior to CQ. So sites for our marketing counterparts were often developed by third-party agencies. The marketing team would get together with an idea, get some budget, go to an agency, and have a site built. This wasn't always the case, but often when we did have internal technical resources, it was still on a lended or borrowed basis. So what we ended up with was a number of people from within marketing reaching out to a number of agencies and having a number of websites hosted in various different places on various different platforms. Some of the fun ones were Drupal, WordPress, ModX, which is just terrible. You wrote PHP and then saved the PHP in a SQL database, which it just doesn't work well. But it posed a lot of challenges, as you can imagine, right? Like, they're everywhere. They're hard to monitor. They're hard to maintain. If you get a global update, like we need to change the footers, you've now got like 6 different CMSs to do. If you want to spin up a new website or a new subdomain, you're now making a copy of an entire code base just to spin up something that looks almost identical, but just new content or new theming. Like, why would we want to fragment our code base in such a negative way? So, over the course of the realization of, hey, we're way too fragmented, we decided to bring all of these sites in-house, bring them in so that our technical team could start monitoring them properly, we could start reviewing them, reviewing the code base properly, making sure that they're secure, they're well written. And so that's where we started the selection process for a single CMS. So there can be only one. And what we did was we hired a consultant. We hired a consultant to come in, basically offer up a number of options spanning Drupal, CQ, some of the other enterprise platforms. And it was what sealed the deal was how well CQ was going to offer authoring capabilities compared to some of the other stuff. It really is one of the closer WYSIWYG style inline editing tools for some of the authors to get on board and start using. And as you can imagine, I think some of you may be pretty familiar with it. Their demo is pretty snazzy. They have their geometric stuff looking awful sharp and awful easy to use. We did find that maybe it wasn't so snazzy when we started using it. But it's still, one platform is better than a multitude of platforms. And so our team was definitely still behind it. So what was it like? After having this platform recommended to us by a consultant, what we realized was that we didn't have in-house technical expertise to push it to a live status with a first website on it internally. So we hired the consultant to give us our first app. We worked with them hand in hand over the course of the time they delivered. But the reality was most of our guys, being people that were working on Drupal and WordPress and ModX, were PHP developers, not Java developers. We did not have a strong engineering support hand in the process. And so what we ended up with was a great app that allowed us to learn more about how to work within the context of CQ, but we realized would not scale to what we needed it to do to house all of our marketing sites. Some of the problems we ran into were the fact that our sites were still tied one site to one app, it meant that we were still going to end up copying down an entire code structure, or at least extending an entire code structure every time we wanted a new domain. And this was the same problem, just in a new system. So we also noticed that there's the out-of-the-box components were a bit messy. There was a lot of inline Java, a lot of inline JavaScript, a lot of inline CSS. It was just kind of like monkey code at times. And ultimately, it wasn't up to the standards that we kind of hold ourselves against in-house. It worked. It was functional. The end user wouldn't have known that it was spaghetti code, but it definitely was something that was a little bit rougher to maintain. So, the contributors working on the first versions of CQ, including Brody here and myself, back in the day, decided that we should consider re-architecting the app that had been delivered to us. How are we going to handle microsites on CQ in a way that would be scalable, that would help get rid of these spaghetti code issues, that would help make sure that it was secure, that it was performant. And we had a lot of tough decisions. So what we first did, the first step was to seek out some of the guys in-house. We have a lot of really smart dudes here. And fortunately, they were willing to sit down with us, and we just picked a lot of our more senior developer and engineers' brains. We didn't know what we were going to do in order to build this Java app as WordPress and Drupal developers at the time, right? So we started throwing down ideas, and ultimately what we decided was if we were going to extend the existing app that had been delivered, we were going to run through a massive amount of regressions. It was going to be one of those things where any change that we did was probably going to break something, or we were going to have to scale the effort in order to maintain backwards compatibility that was just below any sort of reasonable timeline for re-architect, to re-architect it. So what we did is we spun up a new app. And what that meant was we had to define what the new app should be. We knew that it needed to work alongside the existing app and allow us to start launching sites without interfering with the existing app. We were going to keep it in the same boxes because we were limited to the number of servers that we had at the time, as well as server resources in general, including even just the people that would help us put them up. And we knew that the out-of-the-box components weren't good enough. We had security issues with some of them. We had issues, obviously, as I mentioned, with some of the ways that the code was originally put together. And we had an issue where some of our authors struggled with the dragging and stacking of nested, like deep nested components, where you drag this one container, and then you drag the column, and then you drag the paragraph, and then you drag